The Flowering of the Strange Orchid, written by H.G. Wells in 1895. The buying of orchids always has in it a certain speculative flavor. You have before you the brown, shriveled-up tissue, and for the rest you must trust your judgment, or the auctioneer, or your good luck, as your taste may incline. The plant might be moribund or dead, or it may be just a respectable purchase, fair value for your money. Or perhaps, for the thing has happened again and again, there slowly unfolds before the delighted eyes, the happy purchaser, day after day, some new variety, some novel richness, a strange twist of the labellum, or some subtler coloration or unexpected mimicry. Pride, beauty, and profit blossom together in one delicate green spike, and it may be even immortality. For the new miracle of nature may stand to need a new specific name, and what so convenient as its discoverer, John Smithia. There have been worse names. It was perhaps the hope of some such happy discovery that made Winter Weatherbourne such a frequent attendant at these sales. That hope, and also, maybe, the fact that he had nothing else than the slightest interest to do in the world. He was shy, lonely, rather ineffectual man, provided with enough income to keep off the spur of necessity, and not enough nervous energy to make him seek any exciting employments. He might have collected stamps or coins, or translated Horace, or bound books, or invented new species of diatoms. But, as it happened, he grew orchids and had one ambitious little hothouse. "I have a fancy," he said over his coffee, "that something is going to happen to me today." He spoke as he moved and thought slowly. "Oh, don't say that," said his housekeeper, who was also his remote cousin. For something happening was a euphemism that meant only one thing to her. "You misunderstand me. I mean nothing unpleasant, though what I do mean I scarcely know." "Today," he continued after a pause, "Peters are going to sell a batch of plants from the Adamers and the Indies. I shall go up there and see what they have. It may be I shall buy something good, unawares. That may be it." He passed his cup for his second cupful of coffee. "Are you certain that these things collected by the poor young fellow you told me of the other day?" asked his cousin, as she filled his cup. "Yes," he said, and became meditative over the piece of toast. "Nothing ever does happen to me," he remarked presently, beginning to think aloud. "No wonder why. Things enough to happen to other people. There is Harvey. Only the other week, on Monday, he picked up a sixpence. On Wednesday, his chicks all had their stages. On Friday, his cousin came home from Australia, and on Saturday, he broke his ankle. What a whirl of excitement, compared to me." "I think I would rather be without such excitement," said his housekeeper. "It can't be good for you." "I suppose it is troublesome. Still, you see, nothing ever happens to me. When I was a little boy, I never had accidents. I never fell in love as I grew up. Never married. I wonder how it feels to have something happen to you. Something really remarkable." "That orchid collector was only 20 years younger than myself when he died, and he had been married twice and divorced once. He had had malarial fever 4 times, and once he broke his thigh. He killed a Malay once, and once he was wounded by a poisoned dart, and in the end he was killed by jungle leeches. It must have all been very troublesome, but then it must have been very interesting, you know, except perhaps the leeches." "I'm sure that it was not good for him," said the lady with conviction. "Perhaps not." And then Wedderburn looked at his watch. 23 minutes past 8. "I'm going up by the 11:45 train, so that there is plenty of time. I think I shall wear my alpaca jacket. It's quite warm enough, and my grey felt hat and brown shoes, I suppose." He glanced out of the window at the serene sky and sunlit garden, and then nervously at his cousin's face. "I think you better take an umbrella if you're going to London," she said in a voice that admitted of no denial. "There is all between here and the station coming back." When he returned, he was in a state of mild excitement. He had made a purchase. It was rare that he could make it up in his mind quickly enough to buy, but this time he had done so. "There and Winders," he said, "and the Dendrobe. and some paleonophis. He surveyed his purchases lovingly as he consumed his soup. They were laid out in a spotless tablecloth before him, and he was telling his cousin all about them as she slowly meandered through his dinner. It was his custom to live all his visits to London over again in the evening for her and his own entertainment. I knew something would happen today, and I have bought all these. Some of them I feel sure. Do you know that some of them will be remarkable? I don't know how it is, but I feel just as sure as if someone had told me that some of these will turn out remarkable. That one, he pointed to a shriveled rhizome, was not identified. It may be a Palaenophis, or it may not. It may be a new species, or even a new genus, and it was the last of the poor batten ever collected. I don't like the look of it, said his housekeeper. It's such an ugly shape. To me, it scarcely seems to have a shape. I don't like the things that stick out, said the housekeeper. It shall be put away in the pot tomorrow. It looks, said the housekeeper, like a spider shamming dead. Wedderborn smiled and surveyed the root with his head on one side. It's certainly not a pretty lump of stuff, but you can never judge of these things from their dry appearance. It may have been out in a very beautiful orchard indeed. How busy I shall be tomorrow. I must see tonight just exactly what to do with these things, and tomorrow I shall set to work. They found poor Batten lying dead or dying in his mangrove swamp, I forget which. He began again presently, with one of these very orchards crushed up under his body. He had been unwell for some days, and with some kind of native fever, and I suppose he fainted. These mangrove swamps are very unwholesome. Every drop of blood, they say, was taken out of him by the jungle leeches. It may be that very plant that cost him his life to obtain. I think none better of it for that. Men must work, though women may weep, said Wedderburn with profound gravity. Fancy dying away from every comfort in this nasty swamp. Fancy ill of fever, with nothing to take but chloridine and quinine. If men were lost to themselves, they would live in the chloride and quinine, and no one around you but horrible natives. They say that the Andaman Islands are most disgusting wretches, and anyhow, they can scarcely make good nurses, not having the necessary training, and just for people in England to have orchards. I don't suppose it was comfortable, but some men seem to enjoy that kind of thing, said Wedderburn. Anyhow, the natives of his party were sufficiently civilized to take care of all of his collection until his colleague, who was an ornithologist, though they could not tell the species of the orchard and had let it wither, and it makes these things more interesting. It makes them disgusting. I should be afraid of some of the malaria clinging to them, and just think, there has been a dead body lying across that ugly thing. I never thought of that before. There, I declare I cannot eat another mouthful of dinner. I will take them off the table if you like, and put them in the window seat. I can see them just as well there. The next few days, he was indeed singularly busy in his steamy little hothouse, fuzzing about with charcoal, lumps of teak, moss, and all other mysteries of the orchard cultivator. He considered he was having a wonderfully eventful time. In the evening, he would talk about these new orchards to his friends, and over again, he reverted to his expectation of something strange. Several of the Vanders and Dendrobium died under his care, but presently the strange orchard began to show signs of life. He was delighted and took his housekeeper right away from jam-making to see it at once. Directly, he made the discovery. This is a bud, he said, and presently there will be a lot of leaves there, and those little things coming out here are Agro rootlets. They look to me to be the little white fingers poking out of the brown, said his housekeeper. I don't like them. Why not? I don't know. They look like fingers trying to get at you. Can't help my likes and dislikes. I don't know for certain, but I don't think there are any orchards I know that have Agro rootlets quite like that. It may be my fancy, of course. You see, they are a little flattened at the ends. I don't like them, said the housekeeper, suddenly shivering and turning away. I know it's very silly of me, and I'm very sorry, particularly as you like them so much, but can't help but thinking of that corpse. But it may not be that particular plant. That was merely a guess of mine. His housekeeper shrugged her shoulders. Anyhow, I don't like it, she said. Wedderburn felt a little hurt at her dislike to the plant. But that did not prevent his talking to her about the orchards generally, and his orchard in particular, whenever he felt inclined. There are such queer things about their orchards, he said one day, such possibilities of surprise. You know Darwin studied their fertilization and showed that the whole structure of an ordinary orchard flower was contrived in order that moths may carry the pollen from plant to plant. Well, it seems that there are lots of orchards known to flower of which cannot possibly be used for fertilization in that way. Some of the cypripediums, for instance, there are no insects known that can possibly fertilize them, and some of them have never been found with seed. But how do they form new plants? By the runners and tubers, and that kind of outgrowth. That is exactly explained. The puzzle is, what are the flowers for? Very likely, he added, my orchard may be something extraordinary in that way. If so, I shall study it, and have often thought of making researches as Darwin did. But hitherto I have not found the time, and something else has happened to prevent it. The leaves are beginning to unfold now. I do wish that you would come and see them. But she said that the orchard house was so hot it gave her a headache. She had seen the plot once again. The Agro roots, which were now some of them more than a foot long, had unfortunately reminded her of the tentacles reaching out after something, and they got into her dreams, growing after her with an incredible rapidity, so that she had settled to her entire satisfaction that she would not see that plant again, and Wedderburn had to admire its leaves alone. They were of the ordinary broad form and a deep glossy green, with splashes of dots with deep red towards its base. He knew of no other leaves quite like them. The plant was placed in a low bench near the thermometer, and close by was a simple arrangement by which a tap dripped on the hot water pipes and kept the air steamy. And he spent his afternoons now with some regularity meditating on the approaching flowering of the strange plant. And at last the great thing happened. Directly he entered the little glass house, he knew that the spike had burst out, although his great Paleolophus levi had in the corner where these new darlings stood. There was a new odor in the air, a rich, intensely sweet scent that overpowered every other in that crowded, steaming little greenhouse. Directly he noticed this, he hurried down to the strange orchard, and behold, the trailing green spikes bore now 3 great splashes of blossom, from which this overpowering sweetness proceeded. He stepped before them in an ecstasy of admiration. The flowers were white, with streaks of golden orange upon the petals. The heavy labellum was coiled into the intricate projection, and a wonderful bluish purple mingled there with the gold. He could see at once that the genus was altogether a new one, and the insufferable scent. How hot this place was! The blossoms swam before his eyes. He would see if the temperature was right. He made a step towards the thermometer. Suddenly, everything appeared unsteady. The bricks on the floor were dancing up and down. Then the white blossoms, the green leaves behind them, the whole greenhouse seemed to sweep sideways and then curve upwards. At 4:30, his cousin made the tea, according to their invariable custom. But Wedderburn did not come for his tea. He is worshipping that horrid orchard, she told herself, and waited 10 minutes. His watch must have stopped. I'll go call him. She went straight to the hothouse and, opening the door, called his name. There was no reply. She noticed that the air was very close and loaded with an intense perfume. Then she saw something lying on the bricks between the hot water pipes. For a minute, perhaps, she stood motionless. He was lying face upwards at the foot of the strange orchard. The tentacle-like Agro roots no longer swayed freely in the air, but were crowded together, a tangle of grey ropes, and stretched tight with their ends closely applied to his chin and neck and hands. She did not understand. Then she saw from under one of the exultant tentacles upon his cheek there tickled a little thread of blood. With an inarticulate cry, she ran towards him and tried to pull him away from the leech-like suckers. She snapped 2 of the tentacles, and their sept dripped red. Then the overpowering scent of the blossom began to make her head reel. How they clung to him! She tore at the tough ropes, and he and the white inflorescence swam about her. She felt that she was fainting. She knew she must not. She left him and hastily opened the nearest door, and after she had panted for a moment of fresh air, she had a brilliant inspiration. She caught up a flower pot and smashed in the windows at the end of the greenhouse. Then she re-entered. She tugged now with renewed strength at Wedderburn's motionless body and brought the strange orchid crashing to the floor. It still clung with the grimmest tenacity to his victim. In a frenzy, she lugged it and him into open air. Then she thought of tearing that through the sucker rootlets one by one, and in another minute she had released him and was dragging him away from the horror. He was white and bleeding from a dozen circular patches. The odd-job man was coming up the garden, amazed at the smashing of glass, and saw her holding an inanimate body with red-stained hands. For a moment, he thought impossible things. "Bring some water," she cried, and her voice dispelled his fancies. With an unnatural alacrity, he returned with water. He found her weeping with excitement and with Wedderborn's head upon her knee, wiping the blood from his face. "What's the matter?" said Wedderborn, opening his eyes feebly and closing them once again. "Go on, tell Annie to come out here to me, and then go for Dr. Hedden at once," she said to the odd-job man so soon as he brought the water, and added, seeing as he hesitated, "I will tell you all about it when you come back." Presently, Wedderborn opened his eyes again, and, seeing that he was troubled by a puzzle of his position, she explained to him, "You fainted in the hothouse." "And the orchard?" "I'll see to that," she said. Wedderborn had lost a good deal of blood, but beyond that he had suffered no very great injury. They gave him brandy mixed with some pink extract of meat and carried him upstairs to bed. His housekeeper told her incredible story in fragments to Dr. Hayden. "Come to the orchard house and see," she said. The cold outer air was billowing in through the open door, and the sickly perfume was almost dispelled. Most of the torn acro rootlets lay already withered amidst the number of dark stains upon the bricks. The stem of the inflorescence was broken by a fall of the plant, and the flowers were growing limp and brown at the edges of the petals. The doctor stooped towards it, and then saw that one of the acro roots still stirred feebly and hesitated. The next morning, the strange orchid still lay there, black now and putrescent. The door banged intermittently in the morning breeze, and all the array of Wedderborn's orchards had shriveled and prostrate. But Wedderborn himself was bright and glorious upstairs in the glory of his strange adventure. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.